Whenever. Well, good morning, everybody. Glad to be back with you again. And our topic today is how to rebound when the rug is pulled out from under you, David.
Well, it's a good topic to have. It is. It's a good topic because eventually it happens to all of us.
Right. I mean, and people listening may be like, yeah, I've had that happen multiple times already, right?
Yeah, that's one of those things where I was, thinking about it the other day. As much as we like to do things to keep ourselves from experiencing tragedy like that, it's inevitable
Right.
because you can protect yourself against five things, but the next thing is the thing that'll then go wrong.
Right.
And where you're not expecting it, and that's why it's a tragedy. That's why it's something, you may be working really hard to take care of your health, and yet somehow you get cancer or you get something that comes in, and you have everything great at home with your family, and all of a sudden one day you come home and one of your kids did something and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, oh my word, now what are we doing? Or whatever. It could be anything. You don't know. You may, be working and having a great job at this company, and they all of a sudden announce mass layoffs. And guess what? No matter how good you were, you're gone.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole world of it's going to happen at some point. And you're right, Chris. It's not that it happens once. You're going to go through a few rounds of this in your life. Hopefully not too many.
Right.
But it's going to happen. Someone, like I said, you have someone that can betray your trust. You can have a health problem or health scare. You can get fired. I mean, there's all sorts of ways, when things happen in your life. And the question isn't if it's going to happen to you, because it will.
Mhm.
The question is, what do you do when it does?
Yeah.
How do you manage the situation when something happens and your life just took a hard left turn, and you woke up in the morning thinking, oh, this is going to be a regular day, everything's going to be fine, and then by middle of the afternoon you're sitting there going, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like, my whole life is now going in a completely different trajectory, in a completely different direction, because of the things that just happened this morning. And what do you do? What do you do in those moments? And I've been through those enough in my life. And sadly, I've had multiple rounds of these moments in my life as well. And one of the things, especially here this last while in my life, that I've really been focused on and leaning into is that, you have things that people are doing to you in your life. You have sometimes people do some amazing and wonderful things to you and for you in your life. And sometimes they're little snakes, and
Right.
they do things that are very hurtful and very nasty to you.
Yeah.
And regardless of what's going on in the world, one of the things I've really been pushing myself on lately is, how do you stay in a good state of mind regardless?
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. It's like you can go on and you can get on a call with somebody and you can be helping them. This is one of those that sometimes drives me nuts. So I'll get on a call with somebody, I'm coaching them on their business, and the whole time they decide they want to fight with me instead about things. And I'm just looking at them going, you understand I'm here to help you, right? You understand I'm trying to, but you're just pushing against me and help, and it gets very frustrating. You're like, oh, I can't believe, I just spent the last hour trying my best to help this person, and all they did was keep throwing things back in my face. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing here? And it can get very frustrating and discouraging in those moments. But then you have to stop and go, okay, am I going to let that, excuse me, ruin my day?
Right.
Am I going to let that put me in a foul mood for the next 3 hours because of what this person did? And what I really had to lean into more and more all the time is like, the only person that can control my mental state is me.
Mm-hmm.
I am the one who has control over that. And I can choose to let these events or these people influence it, or I can simply, after it happens, give myself a minute and then recenter myself and say, I'm going to get back to being happy again. Yeah. I'm not going to let that person destroy the rest of my day. And so, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, it reminds me of the quote of, life is 90% or 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond to it, right?
you're going with
that
the Yogi Bear, or you're
yeah, Yogi Berraism.
yeah. I thought, like, where are you going with this one, buddy?
No, but it's that idea that, right? I mean, 10% of things is, you know, maybe outside of our control.
Hmm.
You know, but 90% of the attitude that you're talking about, right? Like the amount that, it's way in our favor. Our response is way in our favor compared to external. It's been interesting. I've been reading a new book, and it's talking about how to change our behaviors as adults and how to improve ourselves. And it's a book called Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith, and he talks about intrinsic and extrinsic factors. Right? Intrinsic are things that happen internally. Extrinsic are the environmental things that happen around us. And so many people focus on the extrinsic, the external. But to your point, if we can really strengthen our mindset and our attitude and our responsiveness to things, good or bad, we can be in a much better place, right? We can be happier. We can be more joyful. We can be more positive. But if we know those people out in the world, and we see it in the media, we see it in daily life in general, right around us, that people just, it's the blame game of everything that's going wrong around us, everything that's going wrong in the world or whatever.
I'm always the
Um,
victim.
yeah, being the victim, getting sucked into the negative news cycle, all the things, right? Like all the world's going to hell in a handbasket kind of thinking. And yet, because I don't fill my mind with not most of that, right? And my, and how I approach life, I don't feel those same negative thoughts in the same space, in the same environment that those people do in their environment, right? So I think this is a really important topic because, especially, I mean, this is bigger than business, right? I mean, this topic is much bigger than business overall. But as an entrepreneur, how many times do things not go the way we want?
Right. Well, and that's exactly it. It's like being an entrepreneur is, I would say, 80% mental.
Hmm.
The battle that goes on between your ears is going to determine whether or not your business is successful. Can you succeed? Well, you're going to go and succeed as far as you are able to succeed.
Yeah.
The ceiling on your business is always you. How
Hmm.
how are you capable of doing it? And you're right. You can spend a bunch of money, do a marketing campaign, run a bunch of ads, invest a bunch of time, energy, and money into a campaign, and have it flop.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're sitting there with a big old fat credit card bill from all the ad spend and very little revenue that came in on the other side.
Hmm.
What do you do in those moments? Or maybe you were in a business deal with somebody and they stabbed you in the back and betrayed you, and now all of a sudden you're in a really bad place. And from just sadly going through stuff like this in my life, I've had to learn some steps on this, because what you have to realize and understand is, like, if you let these people determine your state of mind, you've given your power to them.
Yeah.
You've given all that power that you have inside yourself to something or to someone else. And now they are dictating how you feel. And that can be a very miserable place to live.
Yeah.
I've been there a lot, and it's not,
Well, and I think
it's
it's a
not what I
natural
want to do.
reaction when something happens, right? It is natural to go there and to
Right,
start there. But I think a lot of it is how long do you stay in that space?
right.
I don't think
And
that it's realistic to go, well, something bad happens to me, I'm just going to be happy and move on right away. I mean,
right. And
we all have to process it.
right. And that is my first, I had kind of came up with a 4-step process that I try and lead myself through when these things happen.
Yeah.
And that is step one. Let yourself feel. Like, if a person just betrayed you, let yourself be upset.
Hmm.
If you just got some bad news about your health, let yourself be sad. Give yourself the right and the freedom to let those emotions go,
Hmm.
and let yourself feel, because they're justified. Like, if somebody just
Right.
absolutely stabbed you in the back, you have a right to feel betrayed.
Yeah.
You have a right to feel like angry and frustrated and upset because of what they've done. These are legitimate feelings, and you need to give yourself the freedom to let those feelings out.
Yeah.
Because if you try and ignore them and suppress them, that's not healthy either.
Right.
And so you have to let that out, and you have to let it go. But then once you spend some time letting that out and go, you don't want to live there. And
Right.
that's the trap that you can fall into, is now I mean, I meet people who, went through a divorce, and it's been a year since their divorce. And I talk to them and they spend a half hour straight attacking their spouse, their
Right.
former spouse. And I'm going, I don't even know who this person is. I just met you.
Well, you talk about a year. I mean, there's people that do that
Right.
10 years later.
Right. But this is the problem, is that they never left this space.
Right.
Something bad happened. And again, you do need to get those emotions out. You need to mourn. You do need to grieve. You need to
Right.
get those feelings out. But the key is you can't live there forever,
Mhm.
because then you become a bitter, miserable person.
Right.
And all the progress you make in your business, all the progress you've made in your life gets halted
Yeah.
because you're now stuck in this pit of misery. And so when that happens, you give yourself that, you let it out. You give yourself that freedom to feel. But then the next thing is that you have to start grappling with, okay, what's really true in my life right now?
Yeah.
Because especially when you have a betrayal that happens, when something, a spouse betrays you as an unfaithful, or a business partner or a family member stabs you in the back, and you have these moments, like especially in those types of situations, or maybe you run a campaign that you swore would be successful and all of a sudden it wasn't.
Yeah.
You start to second guess things.
Right.
Like, was that person lying to me too?
Yeah.
Or is that not going to work either? Or not?
Right.
And so you start second guessing everything around you.
Yeah.
And so there becomes this, all of a sudden it feels like you're standing on very shaky ground.
Yeah.
And things are like, what is going on? I don't know what to trust anymore. I don't know who to trust. Is that person going to stab me in the back too?
Right.
And you start going down this path and your brain just starts exploding with suspicious thoughts, and starts questioning everything.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think about an experience I went through more than a decade ago now, or about a decade ago now. And it was with somebody I respected who, had known for many, many years. And it was an ugly leadership situation. And I second guessed myself for quite a while about what could I have done differently on my part. And it didn't just include me and him. It was a lot of people involved. And I was like, could I have done anything different? And, what I had to, and then I started to look back and realize this was like at least the third time where I could look and know that something similar had happened with this person.
Mhm.
So it was a pattern, right? Like, and
Right.
so what I realized was maybe I could have done something different in this situation or that situation in the journey of it all. But the reality is they were taking baggage from one thing to another, and it was basically repeating the same thing, just in a different setting with a different group of people and not even in the same state. So it's like it's not even about proximity and locality. It's like, when we do that, right? When we don't give ourselves the freedom to feel, when we don't, look at what is really true in the situation, like you said, I had to finally just surrender and go, you know what? I can only do so much because in my part, I tried to resolve things. I tried to make things better, even tried to reconcile some things to this person by having lunch with them months and months later. And it just never was like they were just bitter. They were never going to move forward because they didn't get their way the way they wanted to on something. And you know what? Guess what? I'm confident that move forward into the next situation that they're probably now in, and it'll rear its head probably again unless they do what we're talking about today and let some things go.
Right. And I think what you raised a very valid point, which is you start second guessing, what could you have done? And that's one of the things that you really start questioning, is like, especially when someone's betrays you
Hmm.
and something like that, the thing that you start second guessing too often is yourself.
Hmm.
Like, did I miss the signs? Was this,
Right.
should I have picked up on this? What, am I blind? Did I not see this before? How could I have?
Yep.
And what you have to understand is, no, you weren't. More than likely, you were not. That person was just acting in a very deceitful way.
Yeah.
And you don't need to take the blame on yourself for that. If they did something deceitful and despicable, that's them. And
Yeah.
more than likely, they were very adept at hiding it from you for an extended period of time.
Right.
And you were functioning on a normal human level, which is where you trust people
You
and
were,
you
yeah,
were
you were working out a place of trust.
right, and honesty. And then in turn, what you got was that. So and again, that's another aspect of this is like you start second guessing yourself and you start feeling like a fool for ever having trusted that person in the first place.
Yeah.
And you start doubting yourself. And you need to, and what this does is it creates a world where the ground is very shaky underneath your feet.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know what to do next. You don't know where to go next because you suddenly have lost trust in way too many things.
Right.
And so after, and when you're in this phase, you have to learn to figure out what do you trust? Who do you trust? Where is the ground that you can set your feet on that you feel is still solid? And so that's because all of a sudden it's like your life went into an earthquake mode. Everything got rattled and shaken, and you're sitting over here not knowing what to do next. Well, you have to find solid ground. We've let yourself express your emotions. We've gotten it out. We've really mourned. We've grieved over whatever it was that happened. We've gotten those emotions through us. Now we need to find some solid ground to stand on.
Yeah.
Like where can I go that I can trust right now? Where is it that I can go that's safe and that's trustworthy that I can go stand on that I know? And then once you're there, because the landscape has shifted significantly in your life, and all of a sudden so many things are now like you when you go through these times, you think, okay, my life is headed in this direction. And the next 3 years, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is how we're going to be functioning and working. And all of a sudden, you're sitting in a situation where that story is no longer true.
Right.
You're staring at a completely different scenario of what comes next, and you don't know. And you have to accept the fact that it's okay that you don't know what to do next. Okay, get yourself on some solid ground. Find some things in your life that you know are solid and that you can trust. People that are not going to do terrible things to you. People that you can rely on. Things in your life that you can rely on. And then realize it's okay that you don't have all the answers right now.
Yeah.
Because you do start doubting yourself. You do start questioning yourself. You hit those moments where you're like, you're used to having the answers of what to do next. And now you're sitting in a place where I'm going, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to say, it's okay that I don't know because I didn't expect to be here.
Right.
And so this is the third step in the process, is that you have to give yourself the grace for not knowing right away exactly what to do.
Yeah. And that's hard. I mean, it really is hard because we're so, I know for myself, I'll speak for myself, but I know it's true for many others. It's like we're so used to trying, at least believing that we're in control of things and that we can control things. But once again, whether it's a person, whether it's a situation, whatever, disrupts, and causes that break in the flow of what the path you're on, that's it's unsettling, right? It really does throw you off course because we think we control so much when we really don't. And yes, we can control our emotions. Yes, we can control our behaviors. Yes, there are things we can control, but we can't control the external factors. And that's the hard part, right? It's understanding that it's not all under our domain, so to speak, right? There are other people involved. When other people are involved, things get messy. When other, even like you said, like you might be churning and doing a great job of, growing your business, and all of a sudden, like the ad platform you use, like changes drastically. You've been there too on that, right? And it's like you're going, wait a second, we were humming along, now something changed. This is just a technical thing.
The ad account got closed.
Yeah, an ad account gets closed.
And
how many stores?
Going, how am I going to generate leads?
Right. And so people, in business and in personal relationships, things they come out of the blue. I mean, I literally, I remember this was several months ago, but I was meeting with a leader and he was actually going to be letting somebody go that day from his team. That person had no idea on that Friday morning that she was going to not have a job after that day. And I knew it, like I knew it ahead of time, right? Because he was sick. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like she came into work that day thinking everything was normal. Right. She went home that day without a job and unsure of where do I go from here. So that happens in, business all the time.
Right. Well, and like I said, in the last few years, I think it's all calmed down now again. But starting around 2020 was when Facebook went on a ad closer rampage,
Yeah.
and person after person I mean, by the thousands.
Yeah.
They just went out and started randomly closing, and mine was one of them. They just closed and shut your ad account down with no
With no
explanation.
explanation, right?
And this was the primary way that we were generating leads for the business. This is how we
Mhm.
were bringing in revenue. And all of a sudden, the primary source just got rip,
Yep.
the valve got shut off, and you're going, what?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? I don't. That's how we generate all of our leads. That's how we generate all of the business. That's how everything grows. And now all of a sudden they yank the rug out from underneath us. What are we supposed to do in our business?
Yeah.
And you get very frustrated, you get very angry because they won't talk to you. They won't even give you a
Yeah,
reason.
there wasn't anything you could do to figure out how
Right.
to fix it.
And there was no explanation saying you did something wrong. And I know that was true for thousands of people. Like I didn't violate anything. They never gave me any warning saying there's anything wrong. Just one day it was closed and it was shut down and said, nope, you're done. And it's like, what?
But that's also served as a wake-up call, right, as well, that you realize how much control we don't have, and to what they say, making sure there's backup plans and redundancy on things, and that's a lesson we end up learning in some of those situations.
And that's, and in those moments you get very angry and frustrated and scared, honestly, as
Yeah,
to what's going to happen next.
yeah,
But then you have to come to that point where understand I didn't violate anything. I wasn't running ads that violated any laws or any Facebook
right,
rules. It was they had bots running around shutting things down and didn't have any logic to them whatsoever.
yeah.
Like I said, I know almost most everybody I know who was running Facebook ads had their ad account shut down. It
Oh,
was
I mean, it was rampant. I remember without even doing Facebook ads at that time, I remember seeing post after post after post of people talking about this epidemic.
right. And so you have all that, and then you have those moments again. Step three was like, what am I going to do next? And you sitting there going, I don't know. And this is part of it. You have to be willing to sit here and go, it's okay. I don't have everything figured out. You have to give yourself the grace to understand that, okay, I don't have all the answers. I am
Mhm.
not ultimately so when things are going really well, we feel like we're totally in control of our lives. We're determining our own success. We're the reason for our own success.
Kind
And
of on cruise control too.
yeah, and when then stuff like this happens, and we go, uh-oh, I wasn't as in control as I thought I was. There was
Yeah.
a lot of other factors going on here that I hadn't considered. And um, so then the fourth step is, which this is going to, be for people to really consider, especially if you don't have faith in God. I'm going to challenge you to reconsider that position, because my fourth step is you need to lean into your faith.
Yeah.
Because what I ended up going through, because in various times as I go through these types of moments in my life, I have to remember that even though I don't know what to do next, there is someone that does know.
Yeah.
And I may not have the answers. I may be sitting here completely lost as to
Mhm.
what my next step should be, completely confused as to where I should go next. But there is someone who does have that answer.
Mhm.
And there is somebody that can lead me through this and show me where I need to go. And he
Yeah.
cares about me, and he's going to look after me, and he's going to guide me through this. He hasn't lost sight of me. He hasn't forgotten me. He hasn't misplaced me. I didn't get lost in the shuffle somewhere. Like, hey, wait a minute, where did that kid go? Like,
Yeah.
no, like I lost him. Shoot, we better go look for him. Like, no,
Right.
no, he knows where I am. He knew what was going to happen before it happened, and he's going to keep walking with me through this.
Yeah.
And what the thing that time and time and time again that has pulled me through and pulled me out of these difficult situations is leaning into my faith and finding other strong faith-filled people,
Yeah.
and spending time with them
Mhm.
and having them speak into my life, having them help me say, it's okay that you don't have the answer. It's
Right.
okay that you don't know what's next. God does, and we're going to pray about this, and we're going to lean into this, and we're eventually what happens, and this is something that happens again and again and again. And again, if you're not a faith person, you're going to have a hard time understanding this, but I'm going to encourage you to reconsider your position, because when you have this, what you do is you start leaning into your faith and things start to come a little more clear. You go, okay, that happened, but now I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
My next step is over here. My next step then is to do that. And suddenly you realize, and this is the amazing part of all of this, is that when tragedy happens, it hurts, and it's hard. And it's like, we look at that and go, why did I never wanted to go through that? But time and time again in my own life, when stuff like that has happened, what has come next is even better than what was.
Yeah.
And this is where you have to have the faith to get there.
Yeah.
Because too often people will have something difficult happen and then they quit, like the person we talked about earlier who, gets divorced and spends the next several years of his life complaining about his ex-spouse. And you're just looking at him going, dude, stop.
Yeah. Because it's an anchor dragging him down from moving forward in life.
And no one wants to work with you. No one wants to do business with you, because every time you start having a conversation with them, it's only a short amount of time before I'm going to bitch about my ex-wife.
And people start avoiding you. People start, it's kind of like, you're at the grocery store and you see them and you go down a different aisle.
Exactly. Because you're looking at them going, it's not that I don't care about you, but dude, stop.
Right.
Just stop. It's time. It happened. It was awful. It was terrible, but you have to be able to move to the next step.
Right.
And you have to be able to get past this. And it can't just be this never ending. It's like, and especially when it's someone that, like in a situation, like I knew him, but I didn't know his wife. So I have no clue who even, if this lady walked up to me in the street, I wouldn't even know who she was.
Right.
Like I have no connection to her whatsoever. And yet all I ever hear is trash talking about her. And it's just like, you've gotten stuck in life. And unless you go through these types of steps, you're going to stay stuck.
Yeah.
And if something happens in your personal life, it's going to screw up your business. If something happens in your business is either going to end or it's never going to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
It's never going to be able to grow. This is why these types of topics are important, even though we tend to be much more focused all the time on entrepreneurial business building type stuff. We're also people.
Right.
And because we're people, these are the real life challenges of life. Yeah. And we have to be able to lean into these things if we're ever going to get past them and keep growing with our life. If we're ever going to be able to get moving beyond the struggle.
Yeah. When I do like leadership training workshops, I always tell people it's like, we tend to want to put these professional and personal boundaries up, right? And it's like, but the reality is we're one holistic person. So if something happens at home, we bring it to work. If something happens at work, we bring it home.
Right.
It's that whole, kick the dog syndrome that can happen is, having a bad day, business is not working, this, that, and the others. We end up taking it out on the dog or somebody else in our home. And but a lot of that comes because we haven't gone through this process you're talking about, right? We haven't really allowed ourselves to feel. And I know you're right. I mean, I know even as a person of faith, I'll say it this way, that I feel like I probably suppress my feelings a lot of times when things, at least initially, because I think, well, I should have more faith. And I start to kind of beat myself up in that, like I should know, and yet God's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. You read the Psalms, you read, you read scripture and you're like, it's okay to feel, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to hurt. Right. It's just, you don't want to stay in that pit. And that's why what you're talking about. I mean, you and I both have had good, close, friends that have been spiritual advisors, I'll call them, to us, mentors, to help us navigate the challenges. And what would we do without those people? I mean, I have, journals of like just from phone calls or Zoom calls with people where I'm just taking notes of things they're saying and their perspective. And it just helps me reset my thinking and helps me, basically it fortifies, strengthens my faith in the process so that I can move forward. And And yeah, I mean, I think faith is a huge component of this, right? That too many people out there do overlook. And I just don't think people realize, my wife and I have said for years, like, how do people go through so many of the tragedies, the challenges, the losses in life without faith? I can't even imagine that, because it's been my life following God and trying to grow in my faith.
Well, if you don't, this is going to be a very difficult process. If you don't have that element in the game, I'm just, being
Yeah.
honest. This is how it is. Like, if you're going to try and face this as a solo or all by yourself, good luck.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy, and it's not going to work well. And when you do this process, so when you lean into your faith and when you go down this path and you do the things that we're talking about here, inevitably what happens, and it's happened to me every single time, is a new path starts to emerge in your mind,
Mhm.
and you start seeing, like, okay, these are the next steps. This is the
Yeah.
new path that I'm supposed to go on, and this is the new way that I'm supposed to be going with my life. And you realize this new way is actually, even though I wasn't expecting to be here, this
Yeah.
is actually better. And it happens again and again and again. And we all just have to learn to accept that. And we all have to learn to grow into that. But that's called trusting God. That's
Yeah.
called trusting that He has got you, and that you have to be willing to accept that. Even though bad things happen, He's still going to work it out for good,
Yeah.
and that He's not forgotten you or lost you. And so I just, again, I encourage you to do that. And if you need, like, if you are in a situation where you don't have that community around you, that's why we built Design Launch Grow.
Yeah.
And that's why we did all this. That's why we have a faith building call every month,
Yeah.
because we have, people come on and we encourage each other and talk about what's going on, and help each other see the vision for, each other's lives, and help grow in what we're doing. And
Yeah.
this just becomes this place where we can help encourage each other, come up with ideas for each other, help bring each other to a better place. So
Yeah. Yeah. And absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, right? We've talked about this many times, that entrepreneurship, this journey can be very lonely, and you don't have to do it alone. And I think that's honestly, there's some kind of that, American or Western idealism of, I can just do things on my own as a solo act. And I know the word solopreneur has become very prominent, but even solopreneurs have to have people around them to
right.
help them, right? So you can be a solopreneur from a business entity standpoint, but you still need a community of people to help support you and help you see things clearly when things aren't going well, or things do strike. The tragedy strikes, the business really hits a rock wall. That's the thing. I've had this image as you're talking, David, of like walking through, like on a path through the woods, and you get to this point where all of a sudden you're just looking at this super tall rock wall, and if you just stare at the wall, you can't move the wall, right? You can't move the rock. But if you start to shift your eyes and you start to look around and get a different perspective, you'll start to see, okay, there's another path. There's another way to get around this wall to go a different direction. I think where some of us, and maybe many of us at different times, we run into is we become very stubborn with the path we're on. And to me, I've had to learn the difference between persistence and stubbornness, because sometimes you do need to pivot, right? Sometimes things do change. And stubbornness is, I'm going to keep going forward even if it kills me. Whereas you need to say, well, I need to be persistent. I need to keep with it, because it's like we've used that analogy of, you're 6 inches from gold or diamonds. But even in the digging, you still have to change direction sometimes to find the vein, to find the source. And so I think a lot of this talk today is, what are we seeing in these moments, right? Are we giving ourselves the chance to shift our perspective and not just stubbornly hold on to something, like, whether it's that divorce situation you bring up, or a business, challenge or failure or whatever. I mean, I was thinking today just of, I've seen some people on social media talking about their businesses, and I thought about, where they began their journey is not where they're at today. Their success is not because the very first thing they did,
Right.
it's because they persisted and learned in that first venture, and they kept adjusting and modifying, that they actually struck gold by figuring that something out, and so it's like if they just stayed with the original idea, it may not have ever really come to fruition. They would have just been burned out and frustrated and deflated. But they learned things in that process. They adjusted a little bit, course corrected, and then they found what they could really do and serve people with, and now they become super successful because of that. So where we start isn't where we always end up.
Agreed. Agreed. But
So
you need
folks,
that support network around you if you're going to stay in that fight and continue and persist, because it's critical. If you don't have that, it's going to be really tough to make it.
yeah. So, folks, if you need that kind of community, if you need the support of coaches, if you need the resources that will help you see things differently or do things differently, upgrade what you're already doing, or maybe you're thinking, I just want to start my own thing. I want to start my own business, but I don't want to do it alone. I've heard that many times. Then check out designlaunchgrow.com, where you can be a part of a community of entrepreneurs who are supporting each other, who are learning from each other, even as each person is taking their own steps forward, and receiving the weekly coaching and just a vault of resources, video courses and downloadable resources that can really help you, roadmaps to really show you what is the next step I need to take right now from where I am. So check out designlaunchgrow.com. We'd love to have you join the program and be a part of our community of thriving, excited, passionate, purpose-driven entrepreneurs. So, and we will just see you guys next time. And until then, just keep moving forward.